Hello everyone, I'm Oday Abed Al Nabi. Today, we are launching into our updated materials for a critical step in your professional journey. The Certified Internal Auditor, CIA. Part 1, Essentials of Internal Auditing. We'll be covering key areas essential for success, such as Foundations of Internal Auditing. Point 1, Purpose of Internal Auditing. 1.2, Internal Audit Charter. 1.3, Impairment of Independence. 1.4, Role in Risk Management. Welcome. We're excited to guide you through the fundamental pillars of internal auditing with these new resources. Whether you are an aspiring certified internal auditor taking your first steps, an experienced internal audit professional aiming to solidify your understanding of the core principles, a student building your knowledge base, someone involved in governance, risk management, or control activities within your organization, or simply anyone dedicated to mastering the essentials for the Part 1 exam, this updated journey is designed for you. We'll explore the crucial frameworks, standards, and concepts that form the bedrock of effective internal auditing practice and are vital for exam success. Let's start with the most fundamental question. What is internal auditing? According to the official definition from the Global Internal Audit Standards, it's described as an independent, objective assurance and advisory service designed to add value and improve an organization's operations. It helps an organization accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of governance, risk management, and control processes. That's a packed definition. So let's unpack it piece by piece, because understanding this purpose statement is key for both the auditors themselves and everyone else in the organization, the stakeholders, to grasp the real value internal auditing brings to the table. First off, independent and objective. This isn't just jargon, it's the bedrock of internal audit's credibility. Independence means the internal audit function is positioned within the organization in a way that allows it to perform its work freely, without undue influence or bias. Think of it like having a referee in a game who isn't rooting for either team. Their only goal is to ensure the rules are followed fairly. Objectivity refers to the mindset of the individual internal auditors. They must approach their work with an impartial, unbiased attitude, committed to making assessments based on evidence, not personal feelings or pressure. We'll delve deeper into situations that might threaten this independence later on. Next, assurance and advisory services. These are the two main ways internal audit helps. Assurance services involve examining evidence to provide an independent assessment, essentially, telling the organization how well things are working. Are controls effective? Are risks being managed? Are processes efficient? Advisory services, on the other hand, are more consultative. Internal auditors use their expertise to offer advice and insights on how things could work better, often requested by management or the board to help navigate specific challenges or changes. The core goal: to add value and improve an organization's operations. This isn't about finding fault for its own sake. It's about making the organization stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to achieve its goals. Internal audit helps the organization succeed. How does it do this? By bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of governance, risk management, and control processes. Let's break that down further. Governance. This refers to how the organization is directed and controlled. Think about the structures, processes, and oversight mechanisms, like the board of directors, policies, and ethical guidelines. Internal audit examines whether these are working effectively to ensure accountability, fairness, and transparency. Risk management. Every organization faces risks, things that could prevent it from achieving its objectives. Internal audit evaluates how well the organization identifies, assesses, and responds to these risks. Is there a robust process in place? Are the right risks being focused on? Control processes. These are the specific actions, policies, and procedures put in place to mitigate risks and ensure objectives are met. Think of things like approvals, reconciliations, security measures, or performance reviews. Internal audit tests these controls to see if they are designed properly and operating as intended. The systematic, disciplined approach means internal auditing isn't random guesswork. It follows a structured methodology, planning the audit, performing tests, and gathering evidence, evaluating the results, communicating findings, and following up on recommendations. It's methodical and evidence-based. So, when internal audit functions effectively, it creates significant value. It provides the board, the highest governing body, and management with that crucial independent, risk-focused, and objective assurance, advice, insight, and even foresight, helping anticipate future challenges. This, in turn, enhances several key areas. It boosts the likelihood of successfully achieving the organization's objectives. It strengthens those vital governance, risk management, and control processes. It supports better decision making and oversight by providing reliable information. It enhances the organization's reputation and credibility with stakeholders like investors, customers, and regulators. And particularly for public sector or non-profit organizations, it reinforces the ability to serve the public interest effectively and ethically. But for internal auditing to truly deliver on this promise, certain conditions must be met. It needs to be performed by skilled professionals. Competence is key. Auditors need the right knowledge, skills, and experience, and they must adhere to professional standards like the Global Internal Audit Standards. Independent. As we mentioned, its positioning within the organization must grant it freedom from interference, often demonstrated by direct accountability and reporting lines to the board. Unbiased. Auditors must maintain their objectivity, free from undue influence, ensuring their assessments are fair and impartial. Now, let's talk about the internal audit mandate. Where does internal audit get its authority to operate? According to Principle 6 of the standards, authorized by the board, it's the board, that highest level governing body, whether it's called a board of directors, audit committee, or board of trustees, that establishes, approves, and supports the mandate of the internal audit function. This mandate formally defines internal audit's authority, its specific role within the organization, and its responsibilities. Crucially, it's documented in a key document called the Internal Audit Charter, which we'll discuss shortly. The mandate essentially grants internal audit the right to provide the board and senior management with that objective assurance, advice, insight, and foresight we discussed earlier. Notice the mention of both the board and senior management. This highlights an important structural element. Internal audit typically has a dual reporting relationship. Functionally, it reports to the board, often through the audit committee, ensuring independence and direct access to the highest level of governance. Administratively, for day-to-day operational matters like budgets and HR, it usually reports to a senior executive, like the CEO or CFO. This structure helps balance independence with operational integration. The mandate should clearly state that internal audit fulfills its purpose by using that systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve governance, risk management, and control. Standard 6.1, focusing on the internal audit mandate, guides the Chief Audit Executive, CAE. the senior leader responsible for the internal audit function. The CAE's title might vary, e.g., Head of Internal Audit, Director of Internal Audit, but their role is pivotal. The CAE must provide the board and senior management with the necessary information so they can effectively establish the mandate. It's a collaborative process. The board and senior management ultimately decide the scope and types of services internal audit will provide. The CAE plays a crucial role here, working with them and also coordinating with other assurance providers, like external auditors or compliance functions, to ensure everyone understands their respective roles and responsibilities, avoiding duplication and gaps. If laws or regulations dictate certain aspects of the internal audit mandate, which can happen in specific industries like banking or insurance, these legal requirements must be incorporated into the Charter. The CAE is responsible for documenting or referencing the mandate within this board-approved charter. The organization isn't static, and neither is the internal audit mandate. The CAE needs to regularly assess if changes within the organization, think major reorganizations, new strategies, or shifts in the risk landscape, require revisiting the mandate. If adjustments are needed, the CAE must proactively work with the board and senior management to ensure internal audit's authority, role, and responsibilities remain aligned with the organization's current goals and strategies. Let's look at the specific responsibilities of the board and senior management regarding the mandate. The board must engage in discussions with the CAE and senior management about the appropriate authority, role, and responsibilities for the internal audit function. Formally approve the internal audit charter, which includes the mandate, the scope of work, and the types of services internal audit will offer. Senior management must actively participate in those conversations with the board and CAE, sharing their perspective on what the organization needs from internal audit as its mission is defined. Champion the internal audit function across the organization, reinforcing its role and the authority it has been granted. How does this work in implementation? The CAE takes the lead in educating the board and senior management about what makes an internal audit function truly effective. This involves sharing insights into the global internal audit standards, relevant laws or regulations, and best practices gathered from research and professional networks. The CAE facilitates discussions around the mandate and other critical elements that will go into the charter. Key aspects to clarify include authority. This stems from that direct reporting relationship to the board, enabling unrestricted access. Internal audit needs the ability to look anywhere within the organization, accessing records, talking to personnel, examining physical property to fulfill its duties. Role. Primarily, the internal audit team performs audit services. However, sometimes the CAE might have additional responsibilities, perhaps overseeing risk management or compliance functions, although these should be managed carefully to avoid conflicts with the core audit role. Responsibilities. These are the obligations and accountabilities. What are the key stakeholder expectations? This typically includes performing audit services effectively, clear communication of results, ensuring compliance with relevant laws and policies, adhering to the professional standards, and potentially other specific activities agreed upon. Scope of services. This defines what parts of the organization internal audit will cover. Will it encompass all activities globally or be limited to specific regions, departments, or processes? The scope might also specify the nature of services, focusing on financial controls, compliance, operational efficiency, IT systems, or a mix. It could range from broad assurance and advisory services to more specialized areas like performance auditing, fraud investigations, or specific regulatory compliance checks. A critical part of performing these services is confirming that the objectives of the activities being audited are clear and aligned with the overall organization's goals. Types of services. As mentioned, this usually falls into assurance, evaluating existing processes, and advisory, providing recommendations for improvement, but can include specialized audits like performance reviews or investigations. Life changes, and so do organizations. Certain events should trigger a formal review and discussion about the internal audit mandate and charter with the board and senior management. These triggers might include a significant change in the global internal audit standards themselves, a major acquisition, merger, or internal reorganization, a significant change in key personnel, particularly at the board or senior management level, a substantial shift in the organization's strategies, objectives, risk profile, or the overall operating environment, like new competitors or economic shifts, the introduction of new laws or regulations that impact the organization and potentially the scope of internal audit's work. The CAE should formally consider the need for such updates at least annually, even if no major trigger event occurs. Furthermore, the CAE plays a role in coordinating with other assurance providers like external audit, compliance, risk management departments, and helps the board understand how these different functions contribute collectively, ensuring the internal audit mandate is appropriate and complementary. Now, let's move on to the internal audit charter. We've mentioned it several times. This is the formal document that brings everything together. According to Standard 6.2 Internal Audit Charter, the CAE is responsible for developing and maintaining this crucial document. The Charter acts as the constitution for the internal audit function. At a minimum, it must specify the purpose of internal auditing, drawing from the definition we discussed, a statement of adherence to the standards, committing the function to follow the global internal audit standards, the internal audit mandate, which includes its scope and the types of services it will provide, as well as clarifying the board's responsibilities and its expectations regarding management's support for internal audit. The internal audit function's organizational position and reporting relationships, clarifying that dual reporting structure, functionally to the board, administratively to senior management. Before finalizing, the CAE must confirm that the proposed charter accurately reflects the understanding and expectations of both the board and senior management. Regarding the internal audit function, it needs to be a shared agreement. Again, the board and senior management have specific roles regarding the charter. The board must discuss with the CAE and senior management any additional topics needed in the charter to ensure the internal audit function can operate effectively. Formally endorse or approve the internal audit charter, confirming its agreement with the purpose, mandate, scope, and services defined within it. Periodically review the charter with the CAE. This isn't a one-time event. Changes within the organization, like a new CAE, evolving risks, or adding advisory services, necessitate evaluating if the charter needs updates. Senior management must communicate clearly with the board and the CAE about their expectations for internal audit, ensuring these are considered for inclusion in the charter. When it comes to implementation, the charter pulls together the requirements we've discussed regarding the mandate, subunit 1.1, and independence safeguards, which we'll touch upon related to subunit 1.3 later. The charter should also get practical and describe administrative reporting responsibilities. For instance, how are the internal audit department's budget and staffing approved? Who approves the CAE's expenses? Now let's move to bedrock principle, independence. Why is it so fundamental? Well, the entire purpose of internal auditing hinges on it. For the Chief Audit Executive, or CAE, and their team to effectively fulfill their mandate, several conditions must be met. The CAE needs to report directly to the highest level of governance, typically the Board of Directors. They must be qualified for the role, possessing the necessary skills and experience. And crucially, the internal audit function must be positioned within the organization in such a way that it can carry out its responsibilities without interference. This ties directly into Principle 7 of the Global Internal Audit Standards, which emphasizes that the internal audit function must be positioned independently. It's the board's responsibility to establish and protect this independence. But what do we mean by independence? At its core, it's freedom from conditions that could impair the internal audit function's ability to perform its duties without bias. It's about being able to call things as you see them, objectively and truthfully. To ensure this objectivity is maintained, Standard 7.1, focusing on organizational independence, requires the CAE to confirm the internal audit function's organizational independence to the board at least once a year. This isn't just a tick box exercise, it's a formal check in. During this confirmation, the CAE must also communicate any situations where independence might have been compromised, even potentially, and detail the actions or safeguards that were put in place to address these impairments. Transparency is key here. The reporting structure itself is a critical element of independence. The board determines the organizational position and reporting lines for internal audit, and these must be clearly documented in the internal audit charter. A direct line of communication between the CAE and the board is essential. How is the CAE's performance evaluated? If specific laws or regulations dictate reporting lines or processes, these must be clearly laid out in the charter. Crucially, the charter isn't a generic template. The CAE must tailor it to the specific, think regular interactions, perhaps dedicated sessions in board meetings. In fact, board meeting agendas and minutes often serve as tangible evidence of internal audit's organizational independence. Now, sometimes the CAE might be asked to take on roles or responsibilities outside the scope of internal auditing. This can create potential conflicts or impairments to independence. In such cases, the CAE has a duty to discuss these potential impairments with the board and senior management and recommend safeguards to mitigate the risks. If the CAE does take on these extra duties, the specifics, the responsibilities, the type of work involved, and any protective measures must be clearly spelled out in the internal audit charter. What happens if these additional responsibilities also fall under areas that internal audit would normally review? This requires careful handling. Alternative methods must be established to ensure proper oversight. A common solution is to bring in an independent and skilled external assurance provider who reports directly to the board for those specific areas. Consider a scenario where the CAE takes on non-audit tasks temporarily. Perhaps they are uniquely qualified to lead a short-term project. Even here, safeguards are needed. During the period the CAE is performing these tasks, and importantly, for the 12 months after they relinquish those responsibilities, an independent third party must oversee assurance activities related to those areas. This 12-month cooling off period helps ensure objectivity isn't compromised by the CAE's previous involvement. However, the standard 12-month period isn't set in stone. The CAE should discuss with the board and senior management whether this duration is appropriate for the specific circumstances. What if the organization's very structure makes true independence difficult? Perhaps due to size or design, the ideal reporting lines aren't feasible. In these situations, the CAE must document the specific features of the structure that restrict independence and also note any measures that could potentially be taken to help uphold the principle as much as possible within those constraints. The board plays a crucial active role in safeguarding independence. They must foster that direct link between themselves and the CAE, ensuring the audit team can work effectively. The board is also responsible for approving the hiring and dismissal of the CAE. They guide senior management on assessing the CAE's performance and compensation. Importantly, the board must ensure the CAE has a platform to discuss sensitive issues, potentially even in sessions without senior management present. The board must insist that the CAE is positioned to work without interference, allowing them to escalate matters directly to senior management and, if necessary, to the board itself. When approving non-audit roles for the CAE, the board must explicitly acknowledge any potential impairments to independence and work with senior management and the CAE to establish necessary safeguards. Furthermore, the board must ensure management doesn't interfere with internal audit scope determination, engagement performance, or the communication of results. Senior management also has distinct responsibilities. They must place the internal audit function at a level within the organization that allows it to operate without interference. They need to formally recognize the CAE's direct reporting relationship with the board. Collaboration is key. Senior management should engage with the board and the CAE to understand potential independence impairments and actively support the implementation of safeguards. They are also responsible for communicating the reasons for appointing or removing a CAE to the board and should seek the board's input on the CAE's performance review and compensation. Practically speaking, internal audit functions best when it reports functionally or directly to the board. This facilitates performing services and communicating results without fear of reprisal or undue limitations. However, the administrative reporting line often goes to a member of senior management, like the CEO. This creates a dual reporting relationship. While this can seem complex, it's often necessary, providing access to senior management and the authority needed to engage with and sometimes challenge management's perspectives. The leading practice is administrative reporting to the CEO, though reporting to another senior officer might work if appropriate safeguards are in place. Interference, which undermines independence, can take various forms. Examples include management failing to provide necessary information in a timely manner, restricting access to information, personnel, or even physical locations needed for an audit, or imposing unreasonable limitations on resources, such as drastic budget cuts that prevent internal audit from fulfilling its responsibilities. Impairments to independence can arise from various situations. A lack of direct communication between the CAE and the board is a major red flag. Other examples include management trying to limit the scope of audit work that the board has already approved, restricting access to data or people, pressuring auditors to change or suppress findings, or significantly reducing the budget. Impairment can also occur if internal audit performs assurance work in an area where the CAE has significant influence or over activities managed by the senior executive to whom the CAE reports administratively. Let's revisit the CAE taking on non-audit roles. Sometimes this is necessary, perhaps due to a sudden need, like developing risk management activities for a new regulation, or because the CAE is genuinely the most qualified person, or simply because the organization is too small to have separate functions like compliance. When discussing these non-audit roles, the CAE needs to clearly differentiate between roles that are permanent additions and those that are temporary and intended to be handed over to management eventually. Appropriate safeguards will differ depending on this distinction. If the board agrees an impairment exists due to these roles, the CAE should propose safeguards and set a clear timeline for transferring any temporary responsibilities back to management. So, we've established how crucial independence is. Now, let's connect this to internal audit's broader role, particularly in risk management. Independence allows internal audit to provide objective assessments, which are vital for effective risk management and governance. According to Principle 9 of the standards, the CAE must plan strategically to position the internal audit function for long-term success. Strategic planning fundamentally requires understanding the organization's governance, risk management, and control processes. Standard 9.1 elaborates on this, stating that an effective internal audit strategy hinges on the CAE understanding, among other things, risk management. What exactly is risk management? The IIA defines it as a process to identify, assess, manage, and control potential events or situations to provide reasonable assurance regarding the achievement of the organization's objectives. And risk itself is defined as the effect of uncertainty, positive or negative, on objectives. To truly understand risk management within their organization, the CAE needs to delve into how significant risks are identified and assessed. This understanding should cover key areas like the reliability and integrity of financial and operational information, the effectiveness and efficiency of operations and programs, how assets are safeguarded, and compliance with laws and regulations. How does the CAE develop this understanding? It involves gathering information broadly and looking at it comprehensively. Key sources include direct discussions with the board and senior management, reviewing minutes from their meetings and presentations, analyzing communications and work papers from past internal audit engagements, and studying assessments and reports from other assurance providers, both internal and external. The CAE should also be familiar with widely accepted risk management principles, frameworks, like COSO ERM, for example, and any professional guidance specific to the organization's industry or context. With this background knowledge, the CAE can then gather information to assess the maturity of the organization's risk management processes. Key questions include: has the organization clearly defined its risk appetite, the types and amount of risk it's willing to accept? Has a formal risk management strategy or framework been implemented? Discussions with the board and senior management are invaluable for understanding their perspectives and priorities regarding risk. Additionally, the CAE should review recent risk assessments and related communications from various sources: senior and operational management, dedicated risk management functions, external auditors, regulators, and other assurance providers. This provides a multifaceted view of the risk landscape. To help structure how risk management responsibilities are organized, the IIA developed the three lines model. This isn't just a theoretical concept, it's a practical framework designed to help organizations manage risk effectively and ensure good governance. Think of it as clarifying who does what in the complex world of risk. Ultimately, it helps organizations better manage risks, achieve their objectives, and maintain strong governance, making it a valuable tool for long-term success. How does it work? The model outlines three key roles, or lines, within an organization that collaborate to support goals and protect assets. First, we have the first line. This involves the operational managers and staff who own and take responsibility for assessing and managing risks on a day-to-day basis as they work towards achieving organizational objectives. They are the ones directly involved in delivering products or services, and this includes supporting functions like HR. They are directly responsible for risk management as part of their operational duties. Next comes the second line. This includes functions that provide specific expertise, support, monitoring, and challenge related to risk management. Think of specialized departments like risk management, compliance, quality, IT security, or an enterprise risk management ERM function. They help ensure the first line is managing risks effectively, essentially providing oversight and guidance. While risk management is fundamentally a first-line role, the second line assists in this process. Finally, we have the third line. This is internal audit. Internal audit provides independent and objective assurance and advice on the adequacy and effectiveness of governance and risk management processes across the organization. It essentially verifies that the first and second lines are operating effectively and reports its findings to both management and the governing body, the board. Internal audit's role contributes to confidence, clarity, and continuous improvement. When performing its duties, internal audit may also consider assurance work done by other internal or external providers. Why implement this model? The three lines model is important because it promotes clear roles and responsibilities. This clarity helps prevent confusion about who is responsible for what aspect of risk management. Thank you for watching, and as always, continue learning. Stay curious, and we'll see you next video.